This story comes to us from abcnews.go.com. This is one out of Minneapolis, Minnesota from last year, the riots. And you guys, this is one that you'll probably love. This is one where the cops were just stupid. But he took the ride. He didn't beat the ride, but he did beat the charges. A man charged with attempted murder after firing at Minneapolis police officers in the chaotic protests of George Floyd's death has been acquitted of all charges against him. Jaleel Stallings argued self-defense during his July trial, testifying that he fired at the unmarked white van, which it was, after he was struck in the chest with what turned out to be a non-lethal rubber bullet fired by police.
Body camera video shows the moments before Minneapolis police officers encountered Jaleel Stallings. Police driving down a boarded-up Lake Street in an unmarked white van, firing less lethal rounds at some pedestrians and warning others. Meanwhile, newly released surveillance video shows Stallings and others in a nearby parking lot.
You'll see someone run along Lake Street, and that person is shouting, "They're shooting, they're shooting."
In the van,
group the parking lot in the north running. Hit him.
Body-worn camera captures police firing 2 less lethal rounds, followed by gunshots fired by Stallings.
Now, Stallings testified that he thought he was being attacked by civilians and had been struck by a bullet and was bleeding out, according to his attorney, Eric Rice, who told the Associated Press that on Friday. Court documents show that after Stallings was hit, he fired 3 shots toward the van as a warning, then took cover. He surrendered when he realized that it was the police and no officers were hit. Stallings' case drew national attention this week when an online digital news outlet, Minnesota Reformer, reported on his acquittal and examined the case in depth.
Watch. Stallings' lawyer says he had no idea who was shooting at him.
But he thought it were civilians, and potentially the white supremacists that Governor Walz had warned about earlier in that day. Who would expect, if shots are immediately fired and one strikes you in the chest, who would expect that it was the police?
A jury agreed, acquitting Stallings of attempted murder charges. Here's another angle captured on surveillance. It also provides some context to what happens next. Despite officers' reports and a criminal complaint claiming Stallings resisted arrest, he can clearly be seen getting on the ground as soon as officers exit the van, laying there a full 20 seconds before this. Officers approach, kicking and beating him. Stallings suffered a fracture in his face.
Now, I'm not going to read all of it to you. I'm going to put a link to it in the description box below. But a booking of the photo, a booking photo of Stallings taken after his arrest, shows visible facial injuries and bruising. Rice said Stallings testified he had a suspected eye socket fracture, bruising and cuts. The court documents also say he had labored breathing after the arrest because he was hit with that impact, that rubber bullet.
When asked by another officer about Stallings' injuries, here's what Sergeant Patel said.
What
he was resisting when we approached. Yep, that's the way it happened.
It happened. Got it.
As you can see from the videos, they seem to show a very different sequence of events than what was reported in the officer's initial reports than what's written on the criminal complaint.
Minneapolis Police Chief Madera Arredondo told KARE 11 that the judge in the case noted context is important and that the officers had just been through 4 days of rioting, looting, arson, and the burning of the 3rd Precinct. Peaceful protest sometimes quickly escalated to violence. Arredondo also said the investigation is ongoing. The judge in this case, in a ruling, also talked about what he called concerning statements by MPD and described video of officers targeting civilians breaking curfew. Those videos should be released at a later date.
But they're in this white van, which nobody knows what's going on. It's the middle of a riot, middle of a whole protest. The whole nation is rioting. And these idiots are out there in an unmarked white van shooting rubber bullets at people. They ought to go to jail. Then nothing will happen to them, though. Yeah. But I hope that this guy gets paid off. He surrendered. He's, oh, they're cops. I didn't know they were cops. Hey, I give up. And they come up and beat his ass. Why? Because they can. Didn't you know that? If you have a badge and a police certification, you can beat the crap out of anybody and just say, hey, man, I feared for my life. I had to, the guy was resisting. That's the magic word. Resisting.
When asked by another officer about Stallings' injuries, here's what Sergeant Patel said.
What he was resisting when we approached. Yep, that's the way it happened.
It happened. Got it.
Resisting and fear. Those are the two magic words. But he got acquitted. That's one for the team. What do you all think?